The phone rang just as the sun was beginning to sink behind the buildings outside my apartment window. I had been standing at the kitchen counter, rinsing a single plate, the quiet hum of my small life surrounding me. I almost didn't answer. No one ever called me at that hour unless something was wrong. When I saw Mom flashing on the screen, my stomach tightened in a way I knew too well. "Hello?" I said, drying my hands on a towel. "We need money," she said immediately, skipping any greeting. $50,000. As soon as possible. I blinked. "What?" "Don't ask questions right now," she replied sharply. "Just send it. We're running out of time." There it was, that tone. The same one she used when I was 14 and told to cancel my school trip because my sister needed new clothes. The same one she used when I was 21 and asked to delay moving out because family comes first. My heart began to beat faster, not from surprise, but from an old, familiar ache. "Why do you need that much money?" I asked quietly. "You don't need to know," my father's voice cut in from the background. "You're the responsible one. You'll handle it." The line went dead before I could respond. I stood there for a long moment, phone pressed against my ear, listening to nothing. $50,000. Not "can you help," not "are you able," just an order, wrapped in the expectation that I would comply, like always. I leaned against the counter and let my eyes close. Growing up, I had learned early that love in my family was conditional. I was praised when I was useful, invisible when I wasn't. My younger sister, Lily, never had to earn anything. She was loud, beautiful, dramatic, and adored. If she broke something, I was blamed. If she cried, I was told to be patient. If I succeeded, it was treated as luck. I remembered my 18th birthday, how no one came home until late because Lily had a recital. The cake I bought myself sat melting in the fridge. Now, years later, I lived alone, worked 2 jobs, and saved carefully. Every dollar in my account was a piece of my independence. And somehow, they still believed they owned it. I checked my bank app, my fingers shaking slightly. I had the money. I'd worked endlessly for it. I'd planned to use it for a down payment on a small house, something that would finally be mine. The thought of handing it over without even knowing why made my chest burn. They hadn't asked how I was. They hadn't asked if I could afford it. They hadn't even pretended this was a favor. I grabbed my keys. If they didn't want to explain over the phone, then I would hear the truth in person. I needed to see their faces when they asked this of me. I needed to understand why my sacrifices were still expected, even now. As I locked my apartment door behind me, a strange feeling settled in, something between fear and resolve. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I would say yes. And that terrified me, but it also felt like the beginning of something I had waited for far too long. I didn't call ahead. That alone felt like rebellion. The drive to my parents' house was quiet, my thoughts louder than the road. Every red light gave me time to remember things I'd tried hard to forget, the way my mother used to sigh whenever she looked at me, the way my father praised responsibility like it was love. By the time I pulled into the familiar driveway, my hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. The front door was unlocked, as always. I stepped inside and immediately heard laughter. Not relief. Not worry. Laughter. It floated from the living room, bright and excited, and for a brief second I wondered if I had imagined the urgency in my mother's voice. Then I turned the corner, and saw the truth laid out in pastel fabric and glossy magazines. Wedding catalogs were spread across the coffee table. Color swatches littered the couch. A large whiteboard leaned against the wall with my sister's name written at the top in looping letters, surrounded by dates, venues, and numbers with too many zeros. My mother looked up first. Her face registered surprise, then irritation. "What are you doing here?" I swallowed. "I came to see why you needed $50,000. There was a pause. Just long enough. Then Lily appeared from the hallway, already dressed like a bride in a silk robe, her hair clipped back as if she were practicing for the big day. She smiled when she saw me, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Oh," she said lightly. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." My chest tightened. "Find out what?" My father cleared his throat. "It's for Lily's wedding." The words landed harder than any shout could have. I stared at them, waiting for more, some explanation, some acknowledgement of how absurd this was. But none came. My mother gestured toward the table as if showing off a prize. "The venue requires the deposit by the end of the week," she said. "And the dress she wants is custom. Very expensive." I looked at Lily. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked pleased. "You're good with money," she said, crossing her arms. "It makes sense for you to help. You don't even have kids." That was when it hit me, not just the betrayal, but the assumption. They hadn't discussed this. They hadn't asked me. They had decided, long before that phone call, that my savings belonged to her happiness. "You want me to give you $50,000, I said slowly, "for a wedding I didn't even know about." My mother sighed like I was being difficult. "Don't make this dramatic." I laughed, a quiet, broken sound that surprised even me. Dramatic. I thought of the nights I stayed up studying while Lily went out. The jobs I took so she could focus on herself. The way she used to call me boring, pathetic, unwanted. "I don't owe her this," I said. Lily's smile vanished. "You've always been jealous of me," she snapped. "This is just another way you're trying to ruin things." Jealous. The word burned. I looked around the room, the decorations, the excitement, the complete absence of concern for me, and something inside me cracked open. All my life, I had hoped that one day they would see me. Appreciate me. Love me. Standing there, I finally understood. They never would. And for the first time, I knew exactly what I was going to say next. "I'm not giving you the money." The words came out calm, almost gentle, but the room reacted as if I had thrown something fragile to the floor. My mother's eyes widened. My father stood up from his chair. Lily let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "What did you just say?" my mother demanded. I felt my hands shaking, but I didn't hide them. I had spent my entire life swallowing fear, shrinking myself to keep peace. This time, I let the feeling exist without letting it control me. "I said no," I repeated. "I won't pay for the wedding." Silence followed, then the storm. "You are being unbelievably selfish," my father snapped. "Family supports each other." I looked at him and felt something strange, clarity. "I've been supporting this family my whole life," I said. "And no one has ever supported me." "That's not true," my mother said quickly. "We raised you." I nodded. "And I raised myself." Lily scoffed. "This is why nobody likes you. You always think you're a victim." The words hurt, of course they did. But instead of sinking into them, I felt them slide past me, like rain on glass. I thought of every time I had cried alone in my room, every apology I made for things that weren't my fault. I thought of how often I had been told to be patient, to be understanding, to be quiet. "I'm not a victim," I said softly. "I'm just done." My mother stepped closer, lowering her voice the way she used to when she wanted control. "Think carefully. If you do this, you'll regret it. Your sister will never forgive you." I met her eyes. "She never loved me to begin with." That was when Lily exploded. "You think you're better than us now because you have money?" she yelled. "You're nothing without this family." The irony almost made me smile. Nothing without them, that's what they believed. That I needed their approval to exist. That I would always come back, begging to be included. But standing there, I realized something vital. The fear that had ruled me for so long was already losing its power. "I worked for that money," I said. "Every late night. Every sacrifice. It was never meant to buy someone else's dream while mine was ignored." My father shook his head. If you walk out that door, don't expect us to help you ever again. I glanced around the house, the same walls that had watched me grow invisible. You never helped me, I replied. My heart was pounding as I picked up my bag. My legs felt heavy, but I forced them forward. With every step toward the door, the noise behind me grew louder, accusations, guilt, anger. I didn't turn back. Outside, the air felt different. Lighter. My hands were still shaking as I reached my car, but when I sat behind the wheel, a deep breath escaped my chest like I had been holding it for years. I cried then, not because I was weak, but because I was finally honest with myself. I had lost something that day, the illusion of family. But I had gained something far more powerful. Myself. And for the first time, choosing me didn't feel selfish. It felt necessary. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. My phone didn't ring as often. My parents didn't visit. Lily's calls were terse and filled with veiled insults, blaming me for everything that had gone wrong. But for the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel like abandonment, it felt like space to breathe. Word came through a mutual relative: the wedding had fallen apart. The deposits hadn't been paid, the venue cancelled, the designer furious. Lily, who had always demanded perfection, had to settle for a small, rushed ceremony that was nothing like the dream she had imagined. The tabloids never covered it. My sister's carefully curated image of flawless happiness crumbled quietly, painfully. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt free. There was no gloating, no revenge in the traditional sense. I didn't need it. Their disappointment, their discomfort, their frantic scrambling, these were the consequences of their choices, not mine. And watching from a distance, I realized the satisfaction of living well was far sweeter than any act of petty vengeance could ever be. I threw myself into my life like never before. I took a trip I had been saving for years, something I had cancelled countless times to help my sister or meet family obligations. I signed the papers for a small house, a place where I could finally be entirely myself. I painted the walls the colors I loved, hung my favorite art, and filled the shelves with books that had nothing to do with anyone else. For the first time, my world was about me and no one else. At work, my efforts finally began to pay off. I received a promotion, recognition I had long deserved but had been overlooked for because I was always responsible in the background, quietly holding things together. My friends, the ones who had always believed in me, celebrated every victory as if it were their own. For the first time, I realized that family could exist outside of blood, that love and respect were earned, shared, and cherished, not taken for granted. And then, slowly, a sense of peace settled over me. I didn't fantasize about confrontations with my sister or my parents. I didn't rehearse speeches or imagine grand gestures. I just existed in my own life, fully, unapologetically. The bitterness that had once filled me with rage softened into clarity. I saw them clearly now, not as monsters, not as villains, but as people who had never valued me. And that was enough. The ultimate revenge wasn't a scream or a scandal. It wasn't a fight or a cutting remark. The ultimate revenge was living well, standing tall, and choosing myself every day. They had wanted my obedience, my guilt, my compliance. I had given them nothing. And yet, in giving myself everything, I had gained so much more. One evening, sitting on my balcony as the city lights flickered below, I thought about the life I had carved out. I thought about the nights I had spent crying alone, the sacrifices I had made, the love I had longed for. And for the first time I smiled, not with relief, but with pride. I had walked away from their expectations, from their entitlement, from the family that had never really been mine. And in that walking away, I had discovered something precious, myself. And in that discovery, I realized the sweetest revenge is not cruelty or punishment. It is freedom, dignity, and the quiet joy of a life fully, unapologetically lived.